The Cardinals look to end the regular season on somewhat of a positive note with a win over Kentucky, but they're going to have to overcome some key injuries to get the job done.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Friday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my 6th year covering U of L, 4th year hosting this show. Of course, Locked On Louisville, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Today is all about Governor's Cup preview. We will identify the keys to victory for the Louisville Cardinals against the Kentucky Wildcats. We'll continue our conversation about the injuries that Jeff Brohm's team is dealing with, but I figured that we would start out talking about the main storylines, the vibes heading into this game. And I'll be honest, maybe this is recency bias, but the vibes are down, man. I can speak for the Louisville side of things, maybe not fully for the Kentucky side, but the vibes are just down. I can't remember a matchup in this rivalry where the vibes were this down. The least hyped up this game has been in quite some time. Now, Louisville heading into this game 7-4 after losing their last 3, Kentucky 5-6. They're looking to get back to a bowl game. Now, maybe this isn't the case for Kentucky, but just judging from conversations that I've had with a couple friends that are fans of Kentucky, they're kind of stumbling to the finish line as well. And this isn't a unique situation in terms of records. Like Louisville being 7-4, Kentucky 5-6. This doesn't really scream unusual. It's how both of these teams have gotten here. The Cardinals started out 7-1. They've spiraled down the stretch. They've lost their last 3 games, 2 of them at home against unranked teams, and then they just got completely demolished against SMU. Kentucky, on the other hand, started out pretty slow. They lost 4 SEC games in a row. They followed that up with 3 straight wins. They beat Auburn on the road, beat Florida pretty decisively, even though those situations aren't the greatest for those opponents. Hey, wins are wins. Then they beat Tennessee Tech. They lost pretty handedly to Vanderbilt. So both of these teams got embarrassed last weekend and think that they're kind of just stumbling to the finish line. Now, for the Cardinals, losing this game would kind of put the cherry on top of what has been a disastrous end to the season. It's been a free fall for this team for a couple different reasons. Of course, injuries have played a huge part in why Louisville is now 7-4. Isaac Brown got hurt against Virginia Tech, and they've lost the 3 games without him. Now, what I will say is that with the Cardinals being 7-4, it's not just about injuries. Look at the Virginia game. You outgained your opponent by basically 160 yards. Should have won the game. You didn't, but you should have. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Doesn't matter. California, you had every opportunity in the 4th quarter, despite not having Isaac Brown, to win the game. You did not do so. Clemson, you didn't have Isaac Brown, but you had the ball 2 times inside of Clemson territory, down by 1 with a chance to go up, and you missed 2 field goals. So you can mention injuries all that you want, but the reality is that while they do have an effect on the team, you've had every opportunity to overcome those injuries and win games. You just haven't done the little things well this season. You have lost in unique fashion a couple times this season. I mean, the offense gifted Virginia 14 points in that matchup with the Cavaliers. You had a couple opportunities against Clemson. I mean, even against California, you had the ball at the 50-yard line with under 3 minutes to go to be able to get 20 yards to try to kick a game-winning field goal, and you weren't able to do so. Every opportunity to win multiple games this season, and you just weren't able to get the job done. And I'm not going to – I say this. I'm not going to blame 4 losses on injuries. That's kind of where I'm getting at here. The SMU game, you just got completely demolished. And maybe that one was because of injuries, but SMU is just the better team. So losing this game would put the cherry on top of what has been a disastrous end to the season. Now, what happens with a win? Like, how much do things change from a perception standpoint, from a vibe standpoint, with a win over Kentucky? I think, like I said in the cold open, it's a way to muster up a little bit of positivity heading into 2026. Because you beat Kentucky, you moved to 8-4, which you always want to beat Kentucky. Let's be clear. The rivalry game should mean a ton. Like, there's this whole notion of, oh, so-and-so is this team's Super Bowl. And my response to that is, well, shouldn't they be? Like, yeah, like 2 things can be true. Like, you can have high hopes for a season and have focus on the postseason and try to get to a playoff and try to win your conference. But shouldn't the rivalry game also mean more? I cannot stand fan bases, not anyone's in particular, but I cannot stand fan bases trying to downplay a rivalry game. Like, you go into that game. That's the reason why rivalry games are what they are. Miss me with that, oh, well, this team cared more. That's not the flex that you think it might be. In fact, it's kind of you're clowning yourself in that situation. But anyways, winning this game, moving to 8-4, winning the game with the injuries that you're dealing with. Look, I mean, Kentucky's 5-6. They're not a great team. If they beat you and they get to bowl eligibility, hats off to them. I still don't think Kentucky's a great team. I don't think that their fans would argue that this is a great team either. I think they've played better as of late, for sure. I think Cutter Boley has looked miles better than he did to start the season. Now, granted, a lot of the increase in offensive play has been because they benched Zach Calzada and went to Cutter Boley. So back to the topic at hand, a win at 8-4, beating Kentucky. I would take it 10 times out of 10 over losing to Kentucky and having the conversation of losing the last 4 games of the season. And I think it's just a slap in the face. It's more so you have more to lose than you have to win. Because if you lose this game, the vibes are just going to be at an all-time low going into the offseason. Now, if you win, it's not going to take away the stumbling down the stretch. But I think that it gives you a little bit of a sigh of relief. It's like, okay, well, we sucked down the stretch in the month of November, but at least we got the win over Kentucky. It doesn't make things better. I'm sorry, it doesn't make things right. It doesn't take away the sting of the last month of the season, but it does make things better. Somewhat. Bird's eye view, you can look at the season at 8-4 and say that, you know what? I think 8-4 was a failure of a season. I understand the expectations that you have on a perennial basis. Louisville is anywhere from a 6 to 8 win team every single year, while they can outkick their coverage a couple years here and there. You see it throughout the 2000s. 6 to 8 wins. You have your occasional season where you win 9+ games. Now, you won 9+ games in the first 2 years of Jeff Brohm. You could do that by beating Kentucky and winning the bowl game, which you did last year. But 8-4, with the expectations that you had, with the opportunities that you had, I think that injuries considered, 8-4 still is a lackluster season that did not meet expectations. But I will take every day of the week an 8-4 finish with a victory over Kentucky than 7-5 and not beating Kentucky. That goes without saying. But how do the injuries affect the focus of this game? Like, let's say that you do lose this game. How much do the injuries play a part in how you view the end of the season? Because if you lose to Kentucky with the injuries that you're dealing with, I just think that the fan base is numb at this point. I think that that's kind of the consensus, is that, yes, you want to beat Kentucky, but everyone's just kind of hoping the season can go ahead and end because of the injuries that you're dealing with. And like I mentioned on the Wednesday show, I can't think of a time in which Louisville's offense was this beat up. My goodness, it's bad. And we will get more into that in the next segment. But if you lose this game against Kentucky with the injuries that you're dealing with, how disappointed are you going to be? I think that you are going to be disappointed, but just how much? I think it depends on how you lose. If you go out there and the team looks disinterested and you just get blown out, you're going to be more sour, right? But if you lose a close game and the team is playing hard, but they just can't overcome not having Chris Bell, not having multiple running backs, maybe not having Colin Lacey, maybe having to go with a backup quarterback again. If you lose close against Kentucky, maybe the perception changes, but a loss is a loss at the end of the day. I think that a win would somewhat help the vibes, the positivity coming off of a rivalry game victory, knowing that you won the basketball and football matchup this year. It's going to be a cause for some celebration. But to get to a point to where you are victorious on Saturday, you're going to have to overcome some major injuries. We already know who's going to be out, but there's a little bit of gamesmanship going on between both Jeff Brohm and Mark Stoops, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about it. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into Locked On Louisville, covering your team every day. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, and Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. This week is the best week to jump in because their cyber sale is here and their deals are huge. The quality is exactly what you hope for. Incredibly tender steaks, rich flavor, and meals that make hosting or weeknight cooking easier. Honestly, it's the kind of gift that brings people together, and you don't need to guess anyone's size. Save large on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use the promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's Omaha Steaks with the promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. In this season of gratitude, I want to thank you all again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services, including YouTube and TikTok, 5 days a week. Your team every day. Don't forget to leave a comment in the YouTube section below. Hit that subscribe button. Both are great ways to help the show continue to grow. Of course, I mentioned a couple times that the Locked On Podcast Network is now the #1 sports podcast network in the world. That is the truth. And it wouldn't have become a thing without everyone in the Everydayer Club that is making Locked On Louisville part of your daily routine. We appreciate you all so much. And if this is your first time tuning in, we're glad that you are here. We hope you stick around as we go through a critical month of December for Louisville athletics. But of course, this is the final episode of November, and we are spending it previewing the upcoming matchup against the Kentucky Wildcats. Now let's take a look at the Cardinals' injuries. We discussed it a little bit on Wednesday, right? But we're going to extend the conversation, get a little bit more analytical. Now, there's some gamesmanship being played between Jeff Brohm and Mark Stoops. Wouldn't expect anything different, but I will point out the fact that there is no injury report because this is not a conference game for either Louisville or Kentucky. So you're going to see some gamesmanship. We don't know if certain players are going to play. We're going to go into Saturday morning not knowing who's going to be on that field, especially for the Louisville Cardinals on offense. You know that Chris Bell is out. That's kind of the full extent. Miller Moss is questionable. His status is up in the air. You could probably predict that the Cardinals are going to play multiple quarterbacks, but you don't know. The status of Isaac Brown, Kewan Brown, and Duke Watson. Even though Eric Crawford earlier this week made a point of emphasis in a tweet, in a post on X, I don't care. It's always going to be Twitter to me, man. In a post on X that even though they haven't been quote unquote confirmed out, it's very likely that the Cardinals are going to be without their top 3 running backs, meaning that it's going to be up to walk-on freshman running back Braxton Jennings and redshirt freshman wide receiver turned running back Shaun Boykins to shoulder the workload for the Cardinals on Saturday. Now, again, you don't have that confirmation. The same goes for Colin Lacey, who exited the game against SMU in the third quarter with an injury. You don't know his availability. So there is a ton of unknown. And I think when people ask me, why is the spread what it is? Why is Kentucky not closer in this game than what they are? Well, basically, if you go on the unspoken rule of a home team, the Cardinals, according to FanDuel, one of the title sponsors of the show, one that we're going to tell you about here at the commercial break, Cardinals are a 2.5-point favorite. If you believe that unspoken rule that you get a couple points as the home team, this is essentially a toss-up game. Cardinals are minus 154 money line. The reason why it is so close at the moment and why it still could change is that we just don't know. Will we get reports later on Friday? Like, this is being recorded in the morning on Friday, so I don't know about Isaac Brown or Kewan Brown or some of these other players because, there's reports that go on through the day before the game or even on game day where Pete Nakos or someone else will tweet out, so-and-so is expected to miss. You don't know that until it comes out. And Brohm is keeping things extremely close to chest, making Kentucky plan for every single possibility, which is the way it should be. Mark Stoops is doing the same thing. Of course, they are going to be missing linebacker Sam Green, safety Jordan Lovett, tight end Josh Caddis. There are some players in the secondary that their status is up in the air, and we won't know until we get to game time on Saturday. It's just typical gamesmanship. So looking at Louisville's injuries, when it comes to the wide receiving core, pretty clear. Guys like Trayshawn Hurry, Dakari Collins, Antonio Meeks, Chris Hughes, Nate Koriski, Jaleel Skinner. It's going to be all hands on deck because you're missing the vast majority of your receiving production. Like Chris Bell leads the team with 917 yards and 6 touchdowns. Colin Lacey is second on the team with 547 yards. His status is up in the air. No other receiver for Louisville has more than 20 catches or more than 200 yards or more than 2 touchdowns. So a lot of unproven production on the team. Guys got to step up. You need guys like Trayshawn Hurry to have a big game. Jaleel Skinner, Nate Koriski, tight end spots. You need those guys to step up. Dakari Collins, Antonio Meeks. It's all hands on deck. I cannot reiterate that enough. You don't look at one player. It's going to be everyone that has to step up in the receiving category for the Louisville Cardinals. Quarterback, Miller Moss, questionable after that freak injury. And let me make this point again. I don't know how many times it has to be said. These are legit injuries. You will hear some fans from the opposing fan base say, oh, well, they're just ducking the smoke. Guys are quitting, and they're not playing in this game. These are legit injuries. Miller Moss got injured. Chris Bell, you heard from Jeff Brohm, likely going to have surgery on his injury. Colin Lacey has been banged up for a couple weeks. Isaac Brown has missed multiple weeks. Kewan Brown, you could see in that game where he got hurt against Clemson. Duke Watson, unfortunately, has been hurt for almost all of 2025. So this isn't something where guys are just quitting. This is the sort of the accumulation of multiple injuries that have combined into this perfect storm. And like I said, there has not been a time in my life in which Louisville's offense has been this injured. It's not going to be one player that has to step up. It's everyone. And if Miller Moss is your starting quarterback on Saturday, he's got to be the leader that you thought you were getting when you brought him in. Mistake-free football, pushing the ball down the field. And if it's not him, Deuce Adams. You're going to have to extend drives and plays with your legs. You're going to have to try to throw the ball down the field. And if it's Brady Allen, limiting the mistakes. And for Jeff Brohm, this is going to be like a Purdue-esque game. You remember those games at Purdue where they played a lot better than you thought they would because of Jeff Brohm's play calling? You're going to have to pull out all the stops if you're Jeff Brohm in this game. You have to get into your play calling bag in this game, so to speak. I know that Purdue had some pretty talented players on those teams, but this like the sentiment remains the same. You aren't going to have the talent on Saturday. You're not going to have the talent advantage. You're just going to have to step up and have the play calling game like you did against Miami. Now, I'm crossing my fingers. I'm not optimistic, but I'm crossing my fingers that one of Isaac Brown, Kewan Brown, and Duke Watson will be available, because 70% of one of those players still can make a huge difference. I'm just hoping that you can get one of them available, because right now you're resorting to playing a walk-on running back and a redshirt freshman wide receiver that has transitioned to running back this season. So if Louisville wants to win this game, they're going to have to overcome some major injury news, major injury effects to take this game. What are the keys to victory? What does Louisville need to do? There's one thing I'm specifically looking at that I didn't see last week. We saw it last year in the rivalry game, but I'm a little worried about it. I'll tell you what it is. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into Locked On Louisville, covering your team every day. As I mentioned, Louisville is a 2.5-point favorite currently, according to our friends over at FanDuel. Don't forget, football's not the only thing that's going on. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a larger payout. It keeps the game more exciting. I rode the live action in the Houston Rockets Golden State game. Of course, you all know I'm a big H-Town fan. The Rockets were losing by a good margin in the third quarter against the Golden State Warriors. I said, you know what? I'm going to hop on the train. I'm going to live bet the Rockets to win. And Rockets do what they do, and they showed up in the fourth quarter, even without Kevin Durant, and they got the victory out in California. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets to win your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com, sign up, and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Of course, super thankful of you all for consistently tuning in. This is the final episode of November, final segment of November, and we will be back on Monday discussing what happened in this game and previewing the very, very critical month ahead for not only Louisville football, but Louisville athletics as a whole. But let's take a look at the keys to victory. I have three of them. There's probably more, but here are the three that I'm going with. The number one key to victory, what I'm a little worried about, because you watched Louisville just kind of go through the motions against SMU. Looked like they gave up. They didn't show a ton of intensity at any point in that game. They got demolished. Last year, they showed up in the rivalry game. Leading up to that, they hadn't done so since 2017. Last year was a year in which Louisville imposed their will. They were the better team, and they showed it. But I would venture into saying that, looking back to when he was hired, Mark Stoops, regardless of how good his team is, he gets them ready for this particular game. He makes it seem like this is the most important game of the season when this game rolls around. We go back to this notion of, oh, well, so-and-so is the team's Super Bowl. Miss me with that. If you are the coach of a team, you need to have your players up for the challenge in a rivalry game. Credit to Mark Stoops, because he gets his guys ready for this game. They understand the assignment. They do. Maybe it's different moving through the transfer portal era because you have players coming and going, but he has them ready for this game, and I credit him for being able to do that. So key victory, number one, win the emotional aspect of this game. Remember when we previewed the basketball game? How emotions rise, tempers flare. You had to create a positive atmosphere. You had to hone in that emotion and allow it to affect the game positively and not hurt you in this game. It trickles down into the football matchup. And it becomes even more critical because of how this team has spiraled. Last week was embarrassing. This week, you have an opportunity to end the season on a high note and at least retain bragging rights for another season. How do you do that? You start out by winning the emotional aspect of this game. You show up, you put it all out on the field, you don't let emotions affect you negatively in the penalty aspect of this game, turnovers, you name it. The second key, I think, is you have to get pressure on Cutter Boley. Cutter Boley, hey, hand up. He's impressed me this season. Now, I won't say that he is, been one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, but hey, 2,060 passing yards, 67% completion percentage. He has 15 touchdowns and has turned the ball over a good amount, but he hasn't started every game. So he's had good performances against Texas, against Georgia, Tennessee got blown out. Vanderbilt wasn't bad. He's been everything that Kentucky's wanted him to be. He's a redshirt freshman. He started his first game last year against Louisville. Did not look good. Gavin Wimsatt came in and finished the game. I thought Cutter Boley's been fine this year. He's made some plays. And I'm like, man, if they can keep him around for 2026, I think the upside might be there. But getting pressure on Cutter Boley for a couple different reasons is a major key to winning this game. Number one, because when Louisville's defense is at its best, it's getting into the backfield. When you don't get home, the secondary's been vulnerable. See the SMU game. See the California game. If you allow Cutter Boley to throw the football without much of an interference from the defensive line, things aren't going to look good for Ron English's defense. Because I do think that Kentucky does have some playmakers, and Cutter Boley has shown that he can be accurate and he can throw the ball down the field. The second reason as to why you need to get pressure on the opposing quarterback is because Cutter Boley has put the ball in harm's way this season. 10 interceptions. If you thought Miller Moss put the ball in harm's way, Cutter Boley does even more. Cardinals haven't really been able to force turnovers. They've got one forced turnover in the past 3 games. And that one was like a turnover on downs, 4th and goal against Clemson. You haven't forced a turnover against SMU, California, Clemson. Yeah, technically it's a turnover, but if you tackle the guy and he doesn't fumble right there, it's a turnover on downs. You got the fumble. Still, I think Louisville's defense needs to, they've been breaking a lot more than they've been bending lately. And against Kentucky, in a rivalry game where emotions are high, I think you need to win the turnover battle. One way that you do that is getting pressure on Cutter Boley. The third key to victory, and I'll go quickly on this, is I think you have to win the first half. I feel like a broken record here, and I don't think every time that I mention this that there's been a single time in which Louisville's won the first half. Like looking back to this game, or looking back on this season for the Cardinals, the first half has been an Achilles heel for this team, which is a complete 180 of how it was in 2023, in which Louisville was dominant in the first half. But James Madison, you were losing. Pittsburgh, you were losing. Virginia, you were tied. Miami, you were up by 3. Boston College, you did have a double-digit lead going into half. Virginia Tech, losing. California, losing. Clemson, Clemson, you were down by 1 going into halftime, so losing. And then, stop me if you've heard this before, SMU, losing. Having to dig yourselves out of a deficit every single game is not sustainable for success. So, in this game against Kentucky, you're looking to win the emotional aspect. You're hoping to show up mentally and emotionally in this game. If you start out on a good note, maybe things change. I don't know. Am I wrong for suggesting that winning going into halftime might change your fortune a little bit? My goodness. But in this game particularly, And it's one with some high highs and some low lows. That's how this rivalry has gone the past 20 years. I mean, I think that winning the first half would be huge for trying to win this game overall, especially if Miller Moss is your quarterback. And even if he's not, Deuce Adams, how much confidence will that give him if he sees his team winning at halftime going into the locker room? So you've got a lot of new faces that you're going to see have to step up into some big roles on Saturday. Those are the keys to victory for me. Personally, I think Kentucky wins this. I think it's going to be close, but I think Kentucky wins this because of Louisville's injuries, the way that they've been trending. I wouldn't be surprised with whatever outcome, hoping for a Louisville victory, of course, but I think that Kentucky is going to get the victory, but I think it's going to be close. But we'll break it down when we come back on Monday. You're tuned into Locked On Louisville. Thank you so much for making this your first listen of the day. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here in a couple days. Go Cards.